What's going on, guys? It's Char here, and I'm joined by a very special guest. If you want to introduce yourself.
Hey, how's it going? I'm the Daring Lime on YouTube. I think this is actually the first time I've ever introduced myself on someone else's channel.
Yeah, I think most of them you have people collabing on your channel. I think this is the first time, one of the first
Yeah.
times at least, you're collabing on a different one.
Yeah, it's nice. I don't have to set everything up.
Exactly, exactly. So today we have a pretty fun, serious, and it's kind of interesting topic. This has been making the rounds in the community, and it's about FFG, their LCG Fireside discussion, and additionally the article they dropped sometime earlier today. Well, earlier today from when we're recording. It's talking about basically the future of all their LCGs and how that specifically pertains to Marvel Champions. So how are you feeling about this talk? Are you excited to let the people know the opinions?
Oh, the talk with you or the
Uh,
Fireside one?
both. How did you?
I guess I'm excited about both of them. I don't want to
Or
spoil it though, because I
of
got some
course.
charred takes for you here.
Ooh, okay. Yeah, it's gonna be a great discussion. So, but we're gonna get into some nitty gritty details first. Again, please listen to these and don't just skip to the opinion section because it's pretty important. So, we're gonna start off here. And I split this beginning section into three sections here, or like the video generally split into three sections. This is the why. So, first off, we're going to be talking about why from the perspective of Fantasy Flight Games and all the people who make and work on Marvel Champions. Why they're making these changes or basically what they're doing. So here's two quotes specifically from they're either from the video or they're from the article they released later today. And my biggest disclaimer before engaging in this conversation at any step of the way, please do yourself a favor and watch the video or at least read the article, preferably both. We're going to be trying our best to be talking about specific direct quotations in this video, trying not to mince words, to mix up context or anything like that, because it breeds a lot of like, oh, I heard this from someone, and it just basically it muddles the actual message that they gave. And I think it would be a lot more productive if everyone, kind of understood the source material to really come and talk about this as a part of the greater community. Here's two quotes I have for you here. It says, more than anything else, these changes are being introduced to make the LCGs more accessible and, by virtue of that increased accessibility, more sustainable in the long term. This was kind of their reasoning for a lot of the changes they were talking about in both the video and the article, which we'll be getting into here in a bit. Another quote was, by establishing and emphasizing the current environment, which you will understand what that means here shortly if you have not already, an LCG is more appealing and manageable for a retailer to keep in stock, and newer players are not intimidated or confused and or turned away by a never-ending wall of product. So that's the why from the FFG perspective. This is the why. I was going to say the why from our perspective, but this was mostly me who wrote these up, so Lime can add in any that he wants to here. So the why for me was giving our opinion on the proposed changes, discussing them both from a business and player perspective. I think those are two really important lenses to look at this from, because there has been a lot of vocal outcry from the player's perspective, and I'm not saying it's necessarily correct or incorrect. I totally understand it, but there's more to the story I think is important to think about. It's to try and get a cumulative view on all the changes, and I'm not picking or choosing specific quotes. Like, I'm not cherry picking to make it look better or worse. Again, I implore you to read the source material yourself, essentially, and then try to engage in this discussion. And for me personally, it's fun, and talking about the game is fun, and I'm not going anywhere with the game. So, yeah. I don't know if you have anything specifically you have for a why.
Yeah, I'm just here for the clout.
That's the fourth bullet. I'll throw it up on the screen. Yeah, we're
Yeah, I'm
cloud
just here for the
chasing from
clout.
FFG. I'm just kidding. Okay, but
No,
we're
but
gonna.
seriously though, I'm just I enjoy talking to you about the game, so I'm just here to hang out and share some
Yeah,
opinions and have a dialogue between you and the comments, hopefully.
of course, yes. Definitely open to all types of discussion in the comments. So please leave them down below once you finish the entire video, or maybe midway. It doesn't matter. We're getting into the how here. So there's a lot of changes that they are thinking of implementing in their LCGs and are going to implement by the sounds of it going into the future. And this is a bit of the how. Again, these are two direct quotations, not trying to misrepresent context. I tried to get ones that kind of embolden their how. So the first one, it says, it consists of the core set, which is talking about Marvel Champions and their current environment. Any other evergreen, perpetually in print, in parentheses, expansions, as well as the newer expansions that have not yet been retired. In practice, and they're referring to the current environment, this will be approximately 2 to 3 years worth of active expansions. And then this is another quotation where they said the legacy environment, and it's any product that has ever been printed for the game is part of the environment, which is essentially what Marvel Champions has been until this point. And again, there will be more clarification on this in the future. Another quotation here, it says, a likely ETA for the launch of current environment as an official format is early 2026. So they did give a time. This is from the article specifically. It wasn't really laid out in the video that they had. And then this is kind of two of my own, not really opinions, but, giving a bit more context here. So only cards in the current environment will be printed. Older cards will be reprinted and possibly have erratas. Heroes will be remade, essentially. Not the same, but with small changes. This is a really quick overview of what we're going to be talking about. And then also, stuff not in the current environment is considered legacy content, like that quote on the previous slide said. These will go completely out of print, and / they are not considered for overall game balance. This is kind of like a really quick summary of points we're going to be covering here in a second. But if you haven't been caught up and you're, really adamant and you want to hear the opinions first, this is basically all the stuff that's going on, which we'll be talking about here in a second. Okay, so moving on to the first point here. This was the first point they brought up in the video, and I just wanted to get a general dialogue started with this, which I think is a very well, it's a kind of a breath of fresh air. I feel like there's a lot, maybe not a lot, maybe a loud vocal minority of like doom posting, especially when the change of designers that happened a bit earlier, where people were like, oh, that's it. I saw some comments that the game was sunsetting and things like that. Again, I don't think it was a majority of the community at all. I think it was a vocal minority. That being said, they did open with the quotation. I'm not going to read it like I have in the other ones. Essentially, it says LCGs as a whole for Fantasy Flight games are doing very well, and it's a very important thing that they continue to support and create. And they're trying to kind of quell any notion that they aren't going anywhere. This change isn't really, it's not really spun on by the fact that, they're struggling or anything like that. They just want to continually improve them. So I want to kind of open your dialogue at this point. What do you think about this quotation? This kind of like, guys, we're doing fine and the model is doing well.
Yeah, I think this is important for understanding where they're coming from. Another thing that I wanted to clarify and make sure that was clear is that this isn't just for Marvel Champions. So it's also for Lord of the Rings and Arkham Horror and Marvel Champions, and then I assume any new LCGs that come out for them. So there's a couple, at least that I'm aware of, there's a couple LCGs beforehand. I think there was one called the 5 Rings or something, and then another a Game of Thrones one.
Right.
That kind of just I don't think they were as successful, obviously, because when you walk into the stores, it's Arkham and Marvel Champions and Lord of the Rings in all the game stores I see. And I think that's because they keep innovating on the LCG model and try to update it. So it's from just listening to them talk and hearing interviews with the designers and reading their articles and stuff, the LCG model is, like they say, is extremely important to them, and I believe that all of them really care about that. Especially we had that video on my channel where we were talking about what alienated both of us from continuing to buy TCGs, and the LCG model has really helped with that. So, and that's because, what they were mentioning earlier, was that the LCG model is much more accessible to actually sit down and play and be on a even playing field with all the other people. And in this game, it's being on an even playing field in the sense of you want to have at least comparable decks to the people you're playing with.
Right.
You have a shared collection, that's pretty easy because you just build decks. But if you pick up, let's say you have the core box and you have 2 packs, it'd be great if your deck was at least functional, so you're not getting carried by your teammates or whatever, and also that the villains put up a significant challenge to where you have fun while you're
Hmm.
facing them, and you can like adjust that difficulty with your group, going from like standard to expert to heroic and like different modulars and stuff. So like that modular difficulty and like accessibility emphasis that they put on their LCGs, I think was really, really important, and honestly like one of my favorite things about it.
Yeah, I have to agree with a lot of the stuff you said there, and I think it's a really important kind of preface that they put for. I think they understood this was going to be big news, and I always make a joke where it's like FFG just drops like the biggest news on a random Thursday, and I'm like in a live
Yeah.
stream that if a content creator or whatnot, if I wasn't pinged in a Discord that it existed, I wouldn't have known about it. It seems kind of odd from that perspective, but I do like that they open and preface with this because I think obviously as players in the community and players of many of their other games, I know there's a lot of people who kind of mix and match the LCGs. I haven't gotten my chance to dip my toes into Arkham or Lord of the Rings proper, but I do want to in the future. Maybe not as deep as this game. That being said, I do like that they're kind of doing this renewed like, no, guys, the LCGs aren't going anywhere. It's important to us because I feel like, again, probably a very loud vocal minority. Almost any change that they make is going to be met with scrutiny. But specifically when it comes to Marvel Champions, they're like, oh, this X and X or whatever is happening because Star Wars Unlimited is really popular, and it's like every single time something goes bad, they're just like, it's because they're all the printers are making the TCG, or they're all focusing on this because it makes them the most money, and it's like really weird kind of sentiment, kind of made around choices that don't always have to be, how do I say it, tied to other products they have being successful. I think it's important that in the live stream, they also noted that they have an LCG specific design team that is separate from the 3 game design teams, just making sure that one, the model is working well, and 2, the products are working well, and like everything is just coming out at the same quality that the players had come to expect. And I think that was really important for them to open with. But we can probably move on to the next one unless you have something to add.
Not really add to like this point specifically, but I think it'd also be really interesting for us to look at this from us trying to jump into Lord of the Rings and Arkham.
Right, right.
Like I've played Arkham with a friend a few times, and I have the Lord of the Rings revised core box that I've played through.
Okay.
I remember like the only time I went to buy packs that I saw were on sale for Lord of the Rings at one of the stores. I wasn't able to get it because the way that model worked was I couldn't buy a pack and just play it with anything else I had. I had to have the campaign box that pack was built for it to work, which was
Oh,
really interesting. I was not expecting that coming from Marvel Champions.
I didn't know
And that
about
was
that
like one of the
either.
big innovations going into Marvel Champions, was having like literally everything you pick up just like plug and play.
That's really interesting because it's kind of hard to kind of like reach across the pond, so to say, even though they're all LCGs. That I didn't even know that was a thing either. So I feel like a change like this, and we're gonna get into the current environment and whatnot. It's probably gonna be a bigger. I hesitate to say boon. I'm not a player in one of their communities, but it might be better for onboarding new players to those games specifically, more so than Marvel Champions. Which, I'm not trying to spoil my opinions later, but we'll move on to the next. I do think that's an interesting way to kind of view it from. So I'll probably take the lead on this one. So now we're getting into the next thing they covered in the live stream. Specifically, was talking about onboarding issues with the game. So it says, one of the quotes was Marvel Champions, or like LCGs in general, has onboarding issues. And then this one has a mix of like, I'm adding context but trying to put in quotations. Essentially, the quote went, "How do we keep the onboarding breezy and light in a way that is satisfying to both new and old players?" And then I put that the solution to this is in their next slide, which again, not trying to get ahead of ourselves. And then I put 2 like discussion questions in case we needed a direction to go. But I'm gonna tackle them myself. So the first one was, do you think Marvel Champions has an onboarding problem? And then the second is, were you overwhelmed? They kind of gave this example of going to a local game store and seeing all of the Marvel Champions packs on shelves and being really overwhelmed on where to start. That's more of a personal, has that ever happened to you? Um, So I think when you're talking about a game like Arkham or Lord of the Rings, and that example you just gave where you can't like pick up, I don't know what they're called in Lord of the Rings. They're probably not hero packs, but the equivalent to a hero pack, you can't just go into a store and pick it up and play it with like the core box. You need the expansion that goes with it. I think that is a really difficult problem, and I can see why onboarding for those games specifically would be really difficult, because how can you sell product that requires an expansion, but what if you don't have the expansion in stock? Then this is just product that is sitting there. People who are even interested in it can't actually pick up, like it doesn't make sense for them to buy it and then go to Amazon and then pick up the expansion or something, or go to like another board game store online and do that. It's just, I agree that creates a lot of logistical issues. But for me specifically, and I think because Marvel Champions is their newest foray into an LCG, I don't, at least when I was getting into the game, I don't see Marvel Champions having an onboarding problem in a similar way at all. I think it's very different. I think you tout, there's a lot of personal anecdotes in the community, even me getting into the game, where you need the core box and anything else. Like you can literally get anything else that isn't like a scenario pack or whatever. You can get a hero pack, you can get an expansion, you can get literally anything else and it just works. That is like there's no, prior setup. The only thing you need required is the core box, which can be an issue in itself. And then the second one, they use this example where you go into a game store, you see all the hero packs, and I hesitate to say it was like a bad example, but they use a really weird example in the stream where it was essentially like, you go into a store, you see all the hero packs, and you get overwhelmed by the idea, like, what do I buy? Like, do I need to buy it all? And I feel like that's not like a common occurrence for people getting into games. Like, I don't know, they try to emulate. That's good. That's moving into the next topic. I'm gonna save that anecdote for a bit, but I just want to hear what you feel about this. Onboarding in this game specifically, what do you think about it?
I might be like the contrarian in the community here, because like I
Go
think
ahead.
from the brief amount I've seen, I think most people agree with what you're saying, but I think I would say that there is an onboarding issue
Okay.
with the game. Um, Specifically, I have a few reasons for saying that. One is my friend Johnny, who's the villain of my channel, that Trips comes in and tells me I
Nice.
made a rules mistake every once in a while, and told me he was happy I was having a bad day once in the comments. Uh, he's a great
It's a
friend of mine,
menace.
and he loves this game now, and we play it every Tuesday together. It's like every Tuesday we get together. We beat every single campaign now, except for Guardians and Mad Titan's Shadow.
It's awesome.
And so like we're on Loki now for Mad Titan's Shadow, and I don't know if we're gonna do Guardians for Agents of Shield. Like he's gone through every campaign with me and loves the game, but like his initial impression of the game was, I don't think I can play this, because he has a problem with getting like analysis paralysis in games, where
Mm-hmm.
even though he's like a very experienced board game player and like plays like really good at like terraforming Mars and Wingspan and all that type of stuff, he's
Right.
still like when he sees like all the cards and is like trying to think about building a deck, it just kind of like shuts him down, which that's one issue. And then another issue I think is like kind of specific to like the YouTube community of, I would guess that there's a very large survivorship bias in the people that are commenting on YouTube and talking about their experience on YouTube with it, of
Mm-hmm.
the people who are here and engaged in the community are probably didn't have that experience. And like from that, I think it was on Winning Hands channel, I remember Caleb was saying that, I might be getting this wrong, but I think it was roughly a generous estimate of how much of the online community is
Oh yeah, I remember
representative of it
this.
is like 5%. You
Right.
know, it's like if you assume that like I don't know, like that the most engaged players are the people talking about this,
Right.
and the most, so like I can imagine a lot of people like uh some of my friends that aren't as into board games or card games or anything like that,
Mm-hmm.
or like didn't play TCGs, if I like take them, hey, here's Marvel Champions, they'd be like completely like blindsided by that, of like, what do you mean there's that many expansions, and then uh the budget thing, I think what you're saying, like looking at all of it, that I do think that people, I don't know, I do think that a significant amount of people probably do feel like, well, I don't have the game until I have everything, even though that's not true. But if
Mm-hmm.
you haven't played the LCG, you don't know that.
Right.
And then the other thing is, which I think you can relate to. I wanted to bring this up because
Right.
the another thing they were talking about, maybe this is skipping forward a bit, but they were talking about like power creep and
Mm-hmm.
complexity creep, basically. Like if you could you imagine you don't have like a significant like Magic the Gathering or other LCG background, and then you get the core box, you're like playing through, you're probably losing to Claw and
Yeah.
Ultron
Yeah.
in multiplayer on standard. And then you think, okay, I like this game though, so I'm gonna get some cards, and then you for some reason buy Age of Apocalypse. Could you imagine trying to play through that?
Yeah.
Like
No.
as like a new player? Because like you that was the last expansion you got to.
Mm-hmm.
And like you were
Yeah.
streaming it, but like that campaign, like all of the villains in there, like they mentioned they had to keep bumping up the difficulty and like the complexity of the scenarios because of like some reasons that we'll probably go into
Yeah.
later. But I do think that those issues that they're talking about are real, and I'm not convinced that we have a good way of knowing for whether that's how significant those issues are, like
Yeah.
from just the person on YouTube.
So that's true. So I guess I remember watching that Caleb interview, and I guess would the 95% not accounted for in YouTube and online space, how if the community is really that much larger, because I think that the YouTube community obviously isn't huge, right? But if we're like 5% of 95%, like that means that the game, there's a lot of legs behind the game. That means it's really hard to like kind of tackle it from that survivorship bias perspective, because there's 95% of people's opinions who we never know. Where I think that a large majority of them are probably really casual and don't operate in that space where I need to own all of the game to actually own the game. There's probably people in there who go into their LGS and have the core box and like Wolverine and Hulk, and that's Marvel Champions for them. And that is a successfully onboarded player, regardless if they, um, you know, regardless if they, continually buy the product or not. And I think what they're talking about for their onboarding specifically is like, how do we get kind of like these people who aren't playing the game and these people who play the game as a board game only, that aren't super committed, they don't buy any release, how do we onboard them into like a committed player? I don't know, I feel like I might be like really reading between the lines a little bit, but I do think it coincides with the kind of criticism, or the thing that I also kind of agree with, that we're going to get to here in a second, that complexity creep really does prevent maybe a person who doesn't play the game or a low investment player to becoming that dedicated player, because they're like, I read um, I read the Four Horsemen hero villain cards one time and I have no idea what they do. I'm gonna go play Claw. Like it's like I don't know. Like I saw someone play through them. I don't know what's going on here. This isn't like the game I played. And again, I think this is more suited for this next section, so I'm gonna go ahead and go to it. So yeah, we're gonna be talking about the current environment. This was probably one of their bigger and kind of the crux of what they announced, basically. On the stream, and they reiterated in the article in greater detail. I'm going to make sure, yeah, okay, there's only one slide of this. Just going to kind of read these quotations real quick. So they said they're going to establish what they're calling the current environment. It is going to consist of the core set for each product and the last 2 to 3 years of products for that game line. And everything else will be grouped into the legacy environment, which is if the product hasn't released in the last 2 to 3 years, or a special exception. I don't know what these special exceptions are going to be. They are not part of the current environment. They are relegated to the legacy environment. And again, there's another quote that kind of reiterates this. It consists of the core set and other evergreen, perpetually in print expansions. Again, I don't really know what that entails. It seems like something that they can choose on their own, as well as the newer expansions that have not yet been retired. And then they said in practice it'll be 2 to 3 years worth of active expansions. So they give a lot of, they give more reasoning and whatnot behind this, but one of them is basically tied to like that onboarding issue that we were talking about, where when you have all of this product on the shelf and complexity creep that is continually moving upward and upward, it becomes really hard, both from the player perspective trying to get into the game, from the business owner perspective of your local game stores who have to kind of put all of this out on the floor. It takes up floor space, and if it's not selling, from people who can't get engaged, there's these really different pain points at every single step. And then for Fantasy Flight Games specifically, they again, skipping forward a little bit, they kind of echoed ideas of keeping all these products in rotation and in print just isn't really feasible for them financially either. So it seems like from their explanation, at every step, whether you're a player, whether you're the business owner selling the product, or whether you're them creating the product, what they're doing isn't working, and their solution to that is basically, in essence, going to a TCG model set rotation format. And there's a lot of considerations that come with that. And of course, this was probably the biggest point of contention for literally everybody, because it encapsulates the reason for all of the changes we're going to be moving on to here in a second. What do you think about current expansion generally? I think I will, before I give the floor to you, I will say I don't think this idea of the current environment is necessarily bad in the slightest. I think the idea behind it is solid. I do think how they announced it and how we're going into it is where I have problems with it. But I'll give the floor to you.
Yeah, I think this also goes back to, what do you mean by an onboarded player? Because like that example you gave of like this person has core box, Hulk and Wolverine, and that's onboarded. I'm not sure that that's how they're looking at onboarded.
Yeah, I was saying,
Again,
I
it's
don't
like
know.
I don't know how they're looking at it, but I'm guessing like for them to like, they want to keep making the game as long as they possibly can,
Right.
and the only way that they can do that is if the new products are actually selling enough to keep that going. So I'm wondering if, like, again, this is just not a quote from them. I'm thinking about, is an onboarded player that they're talking about someone that is buying the current expansions that come out? And is that what they're looking for? Of like getting new players that are going to start with like Agents of Shield, or like have the core box and then jump to whatever comes after Agents of Shield. So, and then that is interesting, because like I think it's in the article, like the 2 to 3 years was like very, that was what they were saying in the live stream, of just like, it's going to be roughly core box in 2 to 3 years of what's going on. But then in the article, I think it was more specific in saying that there's going to be like an updated list that you can find somewhere, probably
Right.
on the website or something like that, saying like what the defined current environment is. And then also, yeah, because like this also goes into the retirement thing, which, because the retiring is a big part of this, because they're basically just, like the example, yeah.
Yeah, we can move on to the next one. Yeah, again, all these things kind of, they're really, connected to each other, and that was kind of current environment generally. Just gonna belt out these 3 quick quotes and let you get back to it. So, as a part of the current environment, they said, there's a couple quotes I have here. They said, because cards are being retired, reprinting of select cards is very important for the game. If you've ever played a TCG, which of course not everyone has, for something like Pokemon that has a set rotation, every time a card that's like a staple, or someone that, something that's like really ubiquitous to the game gets rotated out, it usually takes them a couple sets, unless it was really like game warping that it was in every single deck. But if it's something that's like generally strong or solid, for a set rotation game, these cards kind of get reprinted again. For something like Marvel Champions, which is cooperative and not super competitive, I don't really know how it's going to manifest. Maybe we'll just get copies of Endurance 7, 8, 9 or whatever. But I think it would be 9, wait, whatever, that the ones after that, 10, 11, 12, I think. I'm not really sure how that manifests in this game. Next quote. Cards of this is another one where this is talking about cards that are being retired that won't be getting reprints, basically. The quote was, cards above the curve, too ubiquitous and too powerful, go into retirement, which I have a lot of thoughts on, but I'll let you get it first on this one. And then we have the last one, which is improve on past cards that came out not good enough to see any play. And then it says under a new title or the same title with revised text. And then this really quick blurb at the bottom. They're essentially talking about card erratas. It's another TCG term, or, it's not a TCG term, but like a card game term. And what they're talking about is buffing versus nerfing question mark, because they didn't specifically say this, / retiring. So let's get into what your thoughts were on this and how it reacts to the current environment.
Yeah, because the retirement was essentially, from what I understood, that the example of like Doctor Strange and Captain America are out of print.
Right.
But, and like, it's the people that are wanting to get that are frustrated because like it's Doctor Strange is like $150 or something on eBay, which is like kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree.
Which is super frustrating. But then from their perspective, it's like they want to make new stuff and go forward with the game, and then there's not enough demand for them to like actually sell the minimum printing that they'd have to do with it, essentially. Mm-hmm. So that's just kind of unfortunate. So, and then as a result of that, it seems like retirement is coming in, and I think that's really interesting. Talking about like reprinting select cards that are important to the games. Like, I don't know, like I don't know if Endurance is gonna be one, but like,
I don't
know. What's one that comes to my mind is like, I don't know if this is like the greatest example.
Mm-hmm.
But oh wait, this is probably a pretty good example. Like let's say Wasp goes into retirement or something.
Which she probably will, because she's wave 1.
Yeah, like Wasp came with
no.
like Power in All of Us and a bunch of other good stuff. Like what was it? Like Power in All of Us and was it the Miles Morales ally?
Yeah, it was Power in All of Us, Quinn Carrier, Miles Morales, and Ironheart. I think all come in the Wasp pack.
Yeah, so like that's an interesting thing of like, are those cards going to like I can't imagine Power in All of Us is going to be like one of the retired cards.
I doubt it.
Reprinted, but that's probably an example of like, if those cards go into retirement, maybe we see Power in All of Us printed in like a new hero pack or something.
Mm-hmm.
But then the thing about cards above the curve that are too ubiquitous and too powerful go into retirement, that is really interesting because, like, I made that whole video like at the very beginning of my channel where I like calculated efficiency of all the basic allies. And the difference in just like how useful this ally is compared to other allies was like it was crazy. Like how much better Moon Girl is than like not even than like the Star-Lord basic ally.
Right.
Or that type of thing. Like it's like not even close. Because she's like essentially this free ally that comes in. So whenever you're playing like Genius or Champions or whatever it is, if you're trying to like min-max your deck, Moon Girl, just especially as a basic, just like goes into every one of those min-maxed decks. Yeah, which is interesting because like we have the freedom to just not, you know.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering if this is relating back to the like, in order to give players a challenge. Like you can see, like I wasn't around for this, but from what I heard by afterwards was that people gave feedback of like Red Skull campaign too easy.
Yeah.
And then we get Guardians campaign.
They tiled it all the way up.
Yeah, okay. This is harder. Is this what you wanted? And then it was like Guardians campaign too hard. But then like that balance, I think they've done a better job of like balancing the difficulty in there. But like even these days, there's multiple builds that can just like take out the hardest villains in the game in solo on expert, which
Mm-hmm.
is like, how do you keep increasing the levers on the difficulty to where it's still fun for people that aren't trying to do that?
Yeah.
You know, so like I think that's probably part of that is like if like hone technique dive bomb is just like too powerful, especially in multiplayer where you just board wipe everyone, then they probably like Nick Fury, for instance. I was thinking about this. He has his assault form of his suit. He can remove 3 threat from it to increase the damage from an attack. He can play hone
It's
technique.
gonna
He can
be
go aerial with
insane.
his car. So like when he does hone technique dive bomb, which he can go aerial every turn, so it's going to be consistent, and he has ways of getting his car.
Mm-hmm.
Dive bomb does the 7, increased by 4 up to 11. That's increased again by 3 up to 14 damage to
14.
an enemy, and then was it 8 damage to every other enemy on the
It's
table?
insane. Yeah.
Like, but Nick Fury's car is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would you not print his car because then like the people that are the player base that's wanting to like optimize decks is just gonna be like, oh well, that's a solved character,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? Like I feel like they're so I'm kind of I just think it's I don't really have that strong of opinions on it. I think it's mostly just like really interesting. I guess another thing related to this that's been on my mind is I remember reading or is either reading an article or listening to a podcast that Michael Boggs was on because he was the lead designer for the
Mm-hmm.
Guardians, and he said that it was a surprise to the design team that during the campaign players didn't, if they found it too hard, just play on skirmish mode or make the mod sets easier.
Huh.
They're like
Huh.
expecting that to just be something that players did because it was a part of the game, just adjusting difficulty through skirmish, standard, expert, heroic, and mod sets.
Right.
But then, in my own experience as well, like I don't do that as
No, I
often as I'd
don't.
like to, and like there's that nagging thing in the back of my brain, and I think a lot of people's brain of, oh, if I can't beat Ronin with his recommended mod sets, or I can't beat Venom Goblin with the advanced glider, or I can't beat Magneto with his acolytes, then I didn't beat the final boss. You know,
Yeah.
it's
No,
like
yeah.
that's goes into like maybe part of why they're making this like official environment
Mm-hmm.
to like because if they make it official, even if it's just placebo for us of having a legacy and a current set, it will facilitate it to be like, okay, this is a real mode of play,
Mm-hmm.
and actually the expected mode of play for this box that I'm gonna go. Let's say this Agents of Shield isn't technically part of this yet because it's 2026, but like
Right.
let's say like I'm only going to use core box, sinister motives for Shield, and Agents of Shield in my expansion to try to beat that campaign on expert.
Yeah, I have so many thoughts about this. And you said a lot and it was really good. And I generally agree with a lot of what you said. But I have so many thoughts about this because I'm on my own channel. I'm not gonna plug my series only the one time. This is kind of like the mode I operate in for I call it like my capstone series, whatever the Marvel Rewind. I love
Mm-hmm.
doing limited card stuff, and you said something that really resonated with me. Where when you want to fight Ronin or Venom Goblin and whatnot, and you feel like you would never even consider changing the modular sets because it feels like you're not actually beating them. I feel that completely, but even to a higher extent where when I wanted to play these villains on Extra for the first time, which is the reason I sparked this series, it's like, oh, I want to take that even further. It has to be on Expert, it has to be their mod sets, but it also, I can't use the whole card pool because it feels like in this mode of play where I have all of these options, of course I'll just find the easiest option and I'll just stomp them with it. Right, like I'll pick a hone technique dive bomb strange or something, and
Yeah, I
then
wonder if anyone's done that.
yeah, make him a joke in a 26-minute romp or whatever it was. Like, for me, a part of it is expressing skill through like deck building and play, but deck building with restrictions I find a lot of fun in personally. So I was gonna say in a very selfish reason, in a selfish way, I really like the idea of a core environment because that's how I have fun adjusting the difficulty levers. If something is too easy, like a villain, I'm not saying I don't ever give them harder mod sets because there's a lot of fun in that too. But most of the time, I'll move the lever on myself to where, like, okay, I'm not going to play these really powerful cards because I think it'll be more. It's the same level of difficulty. It's just in a way I find more interesting than throwing in, I don't know, Mystique in Absorbing Man or something like that. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
So that's one aspect. I think the idea of a current environment in general for a game that is not competitive, it doesn't have tournaments, and its co-op is weird but understandable. So how I see it, it almost feels like something really easy that they can explain to people who sell and stock their game, because it's like, oh, I mean, living card game is already a weird thing to explain that isn't a TCG, but now you're like, oh no, we have set rotation now, so you don't need all these products on the shelves. These are the products that are being printed, that's all you need to stock. It all works together well, so like when people come in, you can explain that and whatnot, yada yada yada. That's where I think the main driving factor behind it is. But regardless of that main driving factor that I think personally it's spawned by, I don't hate the idea. So there's a lot of factors on why I don't hate it, because I like playing in limited pools. So specifically for me, I don't hate it for that factor. But I think it's really weird. No matter my feelings on it, I think it's really weird because how, specifically for the YouTube community, it's like, it feels like it almost will create like a weird divide, or like a weird, you didn't actually beat this scenario because you're using legacy environment cards. I feel like it's going to be, it's like going to be really odd. And like, I don't know how I'm going to navigate that because I love playing limited, but like, I'm also not going to go to someone else's channel who, let's just face it, Dive Bomb is going to be a retired card. It's not even a question. That card will never get reprinted. I would guarantee it. And then it's like someone's gonna look at your video 2 or 3 years from now and be like, well, why don't you beat him like in a real way? Like, I don't know, like Ronin's rotated out, but you know what I'm saying? Like, he would be rotated out too. He would be retired too. And you know, that opens a whole new bag of, oh, we might get a new Ronin in another Galaxy box, but we'll go on to that in the future. But it's just gonna create this really weird stigma. Even though I like the idea of it, I don't know how it gets executed, especially because it's a game you play by yourself. And I don't know. I have like so many things. I'll talk about specifically on reprinting the important cards. I think there's really obvious cards that are going to be retired. And I hope that they stick to their guns and they just retire them. I don't want to see another card called Dive Bomb that is the same card with a worse effect, because then we're really going to get in hot water because people are going to be like, you are playing the wrong version of this card. The newest card is its actual effect, and then that's going to cause its whole can of worms. And for example, I was trying to think in my head while you were talking, how would they nerf Dive Bomb? I think the easiest answer would be choose a player and then do the effect, and it would immediately be much worse. It would just be something like, I don't even know how to describe it. Like, it would just be choose a player, the villain and all minions engaged with them take this damage instead of the whole table. But that would make the card extremely boring. So it's like, I hope they don't do that. I hope they just retire the card. But on the other end of this, oh, go ahead.
I don't think that Dive Bomb's the problem. I think it's own technique.
It's probably it's both of them. I don't think either of them. Yeah.
But which one do you retire? Do you take away Ariel's ability to board wipe? Because like if they don't have own technique, then Dive Bomb is just, you hit the villain and you like knock off some tufts and like just like kind of scratch some minions, which that's like pretty chill. But then but some of the cards can feel like, oh, Hone Technique requires 2 mental resources to play it, and then you have to spend a mental to take these, but also Aggression has mostly physical resources on these cards.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like interesting like, which one do you remove?
I was going to say, coming from kind of like a Yu-Gi-Oh perspective, I'm thinking of like how they do their ban list. I think you always remove Dive Bomb because Hone Technique is it's a more fun card that enables more aggression events, and Dive Bomb is the one where, well, why would you ever play a different Hone Technique deck when you could be playing this type of thing? It kind of like really if your character has aerial, it is always a build on your mind. Let's just say that. Like even unless you're, extremely conditional aerial, but someone like Nick Fury, oh my, that's gonna be disgusting, and I'm gonna have fun playing it because we're not in any, we're not in any current format just of yet. But I also wanted to comment on, it's so weird how both sides of this coin. One side, I'm really kind of like, it's gonna create a lot of weird, kind of elitism. Like you're not playing this villain in the current format. And okay, two more things. I feel like this idea of a current format is really weird because most people's first impressions when they buy a box, I don't think when most people buy a new expansion box, they go in and they look at their entire card pool. They're like, oh my gosh, I got Agents of Shield. I'm gonna play Cable Justice throughout this box, and I'm going to completely steamroll all these villains on my first play. I don't think people do that. And it's like a really weird consideration for the current environment because it's like people already only use the new cards when they go through new like villains. Like, is that just me? I don't know. Second point.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I have actually no clue.
Second point was talking about this idea of retiring or like nerfing. I don't think they ever said nerf. That's why there's a question mark there. They said only retire, which I think is a good, if you're going to get rid of a card, just get rid of it. Don't errata and nerf it. It's just so bad. It just makes everything so bad. On the other end of the spectrum, I'm all for buffs. I think that's awesome. I'm really excited if they decide to get these cards that are really I hesitate to say bad, but are pack. They're kind of like they keep weight in my collection box because they never get moved, and I appreciate them for that. That reason specifically. But I would be remiss to say I'm really excited for cards getting buffed, whether it's they say under a new title or same title with revised text, which means they will be errating cards, but they also will be making like kind of spiritual successors is kind of what I'm reading into from that quote. And I'm excited for both of them. I was trying to theory craft something. I was like, how about we make Tenacity not like the worst card in the game outside of the core box? How about we make it one cost? I think it becomes a lot more playable at one cost. I don't know. There's so many directions they can go in for improving specific kind of, again, they're not power creep. They're limited because of certain things, the time they were printed, and considerations from that time period. I don't know.
Kind of did that.
How?
In the sense of the pool aspect.
Yeah.
Upper and stick to it.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's kind of funny.
Yeah, no, they did in a way, but I'm just saying like the actual Tenacity, making it one cost, I think makes it playable. Like I think there's a lot of decks that would consider including it at that cost. Two cost, it's crazy how much that one resource changes the entire outlook. Two costs, no one is playing that card. I'm sorry, it's just unless you're Quicksilver, maybe, and you're not in pool for some reason. Like I don't know, like I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't mean to say that it was replacing it. I just thought it was funny that there's already an analogous like buffed version and an aspect of it.
You get Ragey and whatnot, all the Deadpool cards. Yeah, those are.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, Get Ready is like not a bad card.
Yeah, exactly.
Still, yeah, Get Ragey is just crazy though.
Not my responsibility. The pool was kind of the prototype for all these buffed cards that should be coming in 2026. Do you have any more thoughts and comments on specifically talking card erratas or anything I said?
I was thinking about one thing about Hone Technique again that I thought was, not to bully Hone Technique, but I think one of the issues I see with Hone Technique is that it goes back to like that video I made of I want to play like heroes and not decks.
Mm-hmm.
Of once Hone Technique is on the table, you no longer prefer to play your hero attack.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because like all of a sudden, Hone Technique turns your let's say uppercut from a 3 for 5 into a 3 for 8, and then also you can use the power of aggression to pay for it, and you can't do that with Swing Web Kick.
Yep.
It's like it just like as soon as it's on the table, like all of a sudden now you're not able, you're exceeding your hero strengths, your hero's power level with your aspect, which seems to be something that they've tried to keep under check mostly.
Right. I think both of them could get retired. I mean, it's just I don't know. I think home technique is fun, even though it takes away a lot from that identity. But I don't know if they find that an issue or not. Who
Yeah, I don't
knows?
know. What if only Black Widow can use it?
That would be interesting. I wonder if they would do a thing where they kind of like errata a card that's like a buff and a nerf. So like, what if home technique was like you can use it on your hero specific cards too? I think they would be absolutely insane. But I don't know how they would move the lever in the other way to nerf it. I don't know. Just some thoughts to throw out.
I want to try to think of another card that might be in debates for this, so it's not just the home
I was
technique
gonna
guy.
say a card that I think would be retired or something like Ironheart. I think Ironheart would get
Yeah.
retired. I think
What about good
Moon
old
Girl.
Nick Fury?
He's in the core box. That's the thing. So there's like extremely strong cards in the core box that just can't get retired. We're talking Make the Call can't ever get changed. Nick Fury and Maria Hill are also safe. Like, uh, so it's
Yeah,
really interesting because I feel like the
the double
biggest
resources are
yeah
safe. No,
yeah
no one ever talks about those guys.
yeah,
Those
those guys
ones.
are crazy. Now, I was gonna say that Maria Hill and Nick Fury specifically would be the prime candidates of cards to retire, in my opinion. Like
Well,
it would
Nick
be
Fury
like
Senior is on the way.
he is, but the core box. They said the core set is always. Oh, so this is a whole nother topic. I think maybe we'll get to the end, but I talked a lot in my initial reaction to this, where another one of the interviews on the Winning Hand channel with one of I forget which designer it was. They talked about they had an idea of doing a revised core box at one point, and again they're talking about all these onboarding issues and whatnot that they had. I think they should have just made the revised core box. Not saying that it obsoleted the original, but like when they got into the mutant wave, if they made a mutant core box that gave you, and specifically I'm saying core box because it gives you the tokens, it gives you the dials, that's the stuff that's important, I think, and it gave you the standard set maybe in an alternate art. I think that that could have made waves in terms of onboarding, but I don't know. That's my thoughts on that. I think they should have done
Yeah,
it.
yeah. I don't. I remember hearing that too. That it would have been really cool having
For
the
Professor
trilogy
X, for
campaigns that they were
Colossus.
doing. Yeah, 4 copies of those.
I don't
Yeah,
know. It
that'd
would
be
have been the
funny.
Nick Fury replacement for Professor X, and
And
then you
like
would
the
have had
Mockingbird replacement of like
yeah.
3 costs with instead of stun you get a tough and
Yeah, I mean, I think it would have been perfect, but I don't know. I don't work there. We'll move on to the next one. I think we talked a lot about this. So I think I'm gonna kind of rapid fire these. These are kind of talking about how they're balancing because I think we talked about it a lot, kind of already when talking about the current environment. But they talked about three main pillars in the article about balancing for the current environment. The first one was focus, and it says testing a new set of cards across the card pool with almost 100 other products to establish a desired power level for player cards or difficulty for each scenario consumes a lot of bandwidth. They give this as one of their big reasons for creating the current environment or like for their balancing levers. Um, I I don't have a ton to say about it. I think it makes sense when you're trying to think of a hero kit or you're trying to think of a aspect card, and you have to think of, well, does this break this specific? We're bullying home technique again. Does this break this specific card? Can we even print this? And the answer, if the answer constantly becomes no, the farther the game goes on, I think an argument for a current environment starts to make a lot of sense.
I think we should try to pick the perfectly balanced card in our opinions before the end of this.
Yeah,
What is the
interesting.
perfectly balanced card, as all things should be?
That's I think I have a good contender. I think I have a good contender. But do you have any
Okay.
thoughts on focus or anything? Like, how do you think of this
Uh,
reasoning for the current environment?
I think that it's not the whole reason, obviously, because there's all that
Yeah,
other
there's two
stuff.
other
But
ones. Yeah.
the I think this is a real difficulty to consider because if you're again like it just keeps getting harder and harder and harder to not like miss a combo or like miss some sort of, oh dang, I can't believe that I shipped this and now this character can just like one shot the
Yeah.
entire scenario. Like that's like an example that maybe was intended, maybe wasn't, I'm not sure. But like White Fox and Digging Deep comes out, and all of a sudden Star Lord can just use Avengers Assemble with no Avengers, or not Avengers, Call for Aid
Yeah.
with no Avengers in his deck, guaranteed get the three digging deeps in White Fox, make her a Guardian, Blaze of Glory, one shot the villain.
Yeah.
Like I saw a video on Nelson's channel of doing that combo. I've seen other people do it as well, but it's yeah, that kind of thing. Like I don't think that when you're shipping next evolution, you're thinking, but what about Star-Lord?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you are, then what are you doing with your time? You gotta get on making next evolution, you know?
Yeah,
It's
I
like
feel
I do think this is a problem that would be nice to not exist for them as far as creating more stuff for us to enjoy.
yeah, no, I generally agree. It's just one of those things where there's so many cards, and like I don't know how. I always call back to Yu-Gi-Oh. I don't know how Yu-Gi-Oh has an eternal format. The thing is, they don't think about it at all. That's how they continue making cards. But for this game that's like 4 or 5 years running, 5 years plus at this point running, there's just things that are gonna slip through the cracks. And even if it's just kind of like a symbolic thing, something for retailers or something, just to tie expectations of your player base, calling this legacy and legacy and current. I still think it creates good effects when you don't have to worry about all these things. And also, you were talking about earlier, we don't have to worry about the power and complexity creep. I've saw a couple of the villains in, the previews from Agents of Shield and whatnot, and none of their mechanics or anything out here. They're nothing like they're not crazy. I think the biggest mechanically weird one is like the Thunderbolt scenario, but kind of the early box ones are like Black Widow is like you attack her, she mills a top card and she does something or whatever. Like if there's threat, like they're really simple and fun mechanics, and I think like when you're not, when you don't have your focus on the entire 5 year span of the game, instead of you're focusing on this current thing, regardless symbolic or not, it just helps you make more fun designs and not being afraid of the stuff that's been in the past. Yeah, that's all I gotta say. Next one was Impact. And it says, this means that over time, as the card pool grows, the promise of each new card that is released is lessened. Power creep aside, new cards become less and less impactful over time. This was another reason why they wanted to balance around the current environment. I'll just get ahead. It's another one of the reasons whoever wrote this article did a good job. I think it was Nate. It's just true. There's a lot of time where I'll read like a hero specific card or an aspect card. I'll be like, why would I play this when this card exists, X card exists, it's less conditional, and even though it might be one less damage, I like the flexibility of it. Even if you symbolically play, like I keep saying, in this current format, it is a mode of play that is more limited. So now you're like, oh, I can't bring this specific, event, upgrade, or support because it's not in the current environment. If all my table is, rallying around this idea and really wants to play in this format, I have to think outside the box and make, more fun deck building decisions. And like, again, in a very selfish kind of way, as like someone who makes content on the game, I can be like, when a new card gets revealed, I'm like, oh my gosh, like the format didn't have anything like this before. Like there's no like really mid-rangey minion slaying card. Again, it's really hard to say that because Relentless Assault is never going to get retired. But
I love that card.
let's say it did get retired and something sort of similar came out. You're like, oh my gosh, this opens up aggression to really handle these minions really well. And then I can also give an opinion from the legacy perspective, being like, I'm just going to play Relentless Assault. And both of those are both really valid, kind of reactions to have. I don't know. What do you think about Impact specifically?
Yeah, I think that's specifically because with this model, it's not a competitive game.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not trying to power creep the game. They don't want to power creep the game. And if they're not making the cards better than the cards that came out before, you eventually already have all of the slots filled. Like I have like leadership. I have make the call. I have an event that gets my allies out of my discard pile. I have rapid response. I have an upgrade that gets my cards out of the discard pile. I have the Pixie ally. I have an ally that gets my allies out of the discard pile. And then they release a new way of getting your allies out of the discard pile, and you're like, okay, but is it broken? Is it better than Pixie? Is it better
Yeah.
than rapid response? And it's just like probably not because they're trying not to power creep the game.
Yeah.
It's like, so yeah, I appreciate that because like when you put that into, let's say, power creep aside, wait, never mind. They said power creep aside, new cards become less and less impactful
They're
over
saying
time.
it's not only a side effect of power creep. They're just saying in
Yeah,
general they become less exciting.
yeah. I was just wondering if I was
Yeah.
just making a fool of myself right
No,
here,
no,
right in
yeah.
front of it. But yeah, I think that's also true of. Oh, that's where I was going for it. Not from the power, but just like the uh, adding a new way of getting an ally out of the discard pile is less impactful when you have a card that does that. You have so many different cards that already do that. That doesn't
Mm,
like significantly change anything.
right. Yeah. I think it's well said. I will say there is a slight consideration I have for this, and I think we'll save it for the hero section. But I just thought of something. I'll read this one out. I'll let you take first crack at it. This was the last kind of pillar they gave around balancing for the current environment. Basically saying sometimes there are cards or decks that restrict or even entirely close off design space in a card pool. Maybe it's due to an interaction, or maybe it's due to the card's raw efficiency, or maybe it's due to a critical mass of similar cards within the pool. How do you think about this? I think there's a specific
Like it's
cards we've been
obviously a
talking about.
reference to the pool aspect.
Oh,
No,
yes.
I'm kidding about that. But yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense because like I did like a version of efficiency calculations on cards, and it's just like like Moon Girl, for instance, just literally multiplicatively better than the average ally.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And like Hone Technique closes off the design space for aggression if they want to keep it balanced of dealing multiple instances of damage and aggression in
Yeah,
a way that in Justice seems to be in a more okay state with like 3 steps ahead because you're not increasing 3 steps ahead to by its cost. You're finding a few different ways to increase it by 1.
Mm-hmm.
So taking it from like 2 to 3 or 2 to 4 or 2 to 5 if you get extremely lucky, but that's not consistent. It's not like you're taking it from 5 threat removal, 5 threat removal, 5 threat removal
That
every
would be
single turn.
insane.
Yeah. So yeah, it's funny enough, Miss Marvel can do that, right?
Yeah,
With her upgrade, but that's
in
a hero
Bacon,
doing that,
or
not
not in Bacon. I forgot what it's called.
Shrink.
Yeah, it's
No,
Shrink. No, I think it is Shrink.
yeah. It's like can imagine that it's frustrating of being like, well, I can't make that card because this card exists, or like that would be really frustrating. Like just having your ideas shut down um, by the cards that are already existing. I think
Right.
it's also interesting talking about like due to a critical mass of similar cards within the pool. That's kind of like what I was talking about earlier. Of there's already so many ways to get allies out of the discard pile. There are already so many ways to attach an upgrade to a minion and then have it do an effect when you take it out, or like how many ways can you either increase your defense or decrease the attack block and then get a different benefit off of it.
Yeah.
It's just it would be nice to get like Desperate Defense is so good,
Yeah.
but like I like that archetype. I would be willing to play cards that aren't just exactly what Desperate Defense does, but it's like why would it, if there isn't like a separated format, like why would you print that?
Yeah.
Like,
No.
okay, here's Desperate Defense, but probably slightly worse and a little bit different, mind you.
Yeah.
Or it's like here's you already have your other allies that can do this, but what if this ally is trait locked and can also do that?
Yeah.
Or then you start trait locking everything so that you kind of avoid that problem. So yeah, I'm happy. Not too much. Try not to get too into too many spoilers, but
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to the set as well. And then also similar to you, it was a big shock to me when I went back to do the progression series, and I realized I was having more fun playing the core box Precon decks
Yeah.
against Claw and Ultron and Rhino than I was building really good decks where I was doing the same thing over and over again. It's like
Hmm.
that having a less powerful deck that was built pretty evenly between allies, events, supports, and upgrades, giving me like real choices I had to make, not just like slapping a villain in the face with numbers.
Right, yeah, that's what I was gonna say. We're like I keep referencing to this format as symbolic, at least from a player perspective. For FFG, it's completely real, and it's how they're going to sell the game into the future, and it's really important to kind of understand that messaging and what they want going forward. But as a player perspective, I say it's symbolic because you don't have to ever even acknowledge that this is a real thing, that current format is a real thing. You can just play the game if you have been playing like you've always played it. But for people kind of like, me and Lime who, have gone back in progression series in different ways, there's just a lot of fun in having this lower power type of deck, something lower to the ground, not as consistent, not as optimal, and you can find a ton of fun in that. And if the villains are also balanced around those ideas of playing in this current format, I think it's a ton of fun. Again, this is my own opinion, and personally speaking here, I think it's a ton of fun rather than going in the opposite. And, eventually, if we were continuing on this trajectory, I don't think we would have ever gotten something as brutal as Ronin, but I think we would get there eventually. Like, it would just be an inevitability, and I'm glad they're kind of like sticking their foot, kind of drawing the line in the sand proverbially and saying, no, we're not doing that. And just completely pivoting. And they're going to get a lot of backlash, and they have been from different, outlets. And I don't mind it, and I'm not saying that if you do, you're wrong for it, but that's just how I feel.
That is a thing, like in like their defense of the backlash they're receiving, like what you were saying is they reiterated that multiple times of if you have been playing the whole time and you don't care about having a defined like current format, there's literally nothing different about the game going forward.
Yeah, nothing.
Yeah. Which I
uh,
mean, I guess maybe not. If you want to be like really hypercritical of it, like if they're releasing cards that fill a similar space to what you already have, or like maybe like slightly weaker cards that will see less play, then you know, then you might say like, no, it's different because you're not giving. I will feel like I have less incentive to buy the new packs. That's also kind of the whole point, is that if they don't power creep the game, then they kind of like have to power creep the game in order to have the cards be as impactful as they used to be.
right.
So
I do respect that they're taking that step back, and also you brought up a good point on like aggression not being able to print multiple instances of attack events because of home techniques. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, that's completely true. What are our multiple hit aggression events? One by one or something like?
melee,
It's and then
yeah,
it's
but one by one's a one cost.
and it's conditional though. Like you have to knock something out, so it's three and then
Hmm.
three. Yeah. And they've never printed a high cost one. Like, well, melee's three, right? So that's
That
already,
came out with Miss Marvel.
yeah.
Yeah,
That was
that
before.
since
That was
is there
before.
one that came out after Hone Technique that was
I'm
like
not
three
sure.
cost and higher that did multiple instances of damage? Like I don't know
Um,
if there is. I
yeah.
can't think of one at least.
So that might be an example. Again, this article wasn't only Marvel Champions. They were talking about Lord of the Rings and Arkham too, because they're two active ones. They put Lord of the Rings there, even though everyone thinks it's a retired game, but it's in the article, so maybe there's still hope there. And this is basically the last major point we have, and I think there's also a lot to talk about on this specifically. We're talking about the hero remake slash revisits that they talked about. That also ties into this current format idea. So here's two direct quotes here that I think kind of encapsulate their ideas pretty closely. We will do revisits of heroes, not going to do minor changes or tweaks around the edges. And then the second one was, we want to give you, this was basically essentially right after the previous quote, we want to give you a brand new experience with Captain America or Doctor Strange. I'm going to get ahead of everyone talking about this in the online spaces. I've seen people who just, again, no flame, but if you're going to interact in the discourse, you should probably interact with the source video and article. They are not talking about something like Shuri. This is totally not what they're referring to. They are telling you when a hero gets rotated out, and from my understanding, if they are popular enough, popular enough or they feel they're important enough, they will do a revisit or a remake of a hero. It's not like Black Panther T'Challa and Black Panther Shuri. Those are two different characters. It is Stephen Strange, Doctor Strange into Stephen Strange again. And I think there's so much to talk about this. But I'll let you take the lead here as Mr. Home Technique, Doctor Strange, Sanctum Sanctorum. You've got the
I
floor.
have him right here.
Oh, shoot. You got everything. You're ready and prepared. So what do you
Yeah,
think
I'm
about
ready.
this? I think there's a lot to talk about here.
I think there's a couple different angles on it that are important. Of the one that people are focusing on, like I haven't read as much of the discourse as you have, but I did like scroll through the comments of Fantasy Flight's video,
Hmm.
and the yeah, the retirement was received, or at least when you're looking at only the comments, the people that were vocal in the comments were unhappy with the whole retirement thing, and like unhappy that like Doctor Strange is not going to be able to be reprinted, and I understand that in the sense of it would suck if I'm like trying to get everything in the game, and then this hero that's like so notorious and classic and like one of the first hero packs that came out in the game, I just can't get it now. Like I can't get an official version that's like printed by like their actual manufacturer and not just like a homemade version of it or something like that. That's frustrating.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think their solution of just making a completely brand new version of Doctor Strange is a really cool one. Like I'm obviously biased here because I have Doctor Strange, but I am extremely excited about like just a new take on a character that's not just uh, like I would not be happy if they printed a new version of Doctor Strange and it was just like, okay, some of these cards do a little less damage and they cost a little bit more. And I'd be like, what? No, I'm not ever playing that one. I'm not gonna play the just nerfed version of him. So like, you don't want to nerf him, but then just having a brand new take on like, what else could you do with this character? Like they tried an invocation deck. Maybe it's still an invocation deck with completely new invocations, or maybe it's something even entirely different than an invocation deck. Like there's so many different ways that they can take all these heroes that they make, and I know there's like multiple drafts of the hero before it even goes into development, of like actually committing to one design. So I think it's going to be really cool if they actually go back and do this, and you get like an actual brand new version of Captain America and Doctor Strange. That it's like maybe Captain America still can do this all day, but it's just different. Maybe that's like a card in his kit, and he has a completely other hook. That he's not just the ready bot that has high stats and a lot of resources. Like they
Hmm.
can do a lot. They can do a lot more with Captain America. And not saying that Captain America was bad. I think Captain America and Doctor Strange are both really good packs, obviously, because they're sold out. But yeah, I think it's a really sad problem, and I feel bad for the people that are in the position of never feeling like they're never going to be able to get Doctor Strange without spending way too much money on it. But
Yeah.
also their solution that that they can implement and like justify like to keep food on the table of all the people that work there is a very good one.
Yeah. I generally agree a lot with what you said there. I was gonna say I talked about we're gonna do a business player perspective at the beginning. I've been kind of doing that, but not labeling business perspective. I'm gonna say this is like A plus 100%. Just everything about this choice makes sense from their end. The these heroes are not by their own metrics of what a successful product printing looks like. These heroes do not meet those thresholds anymore for how old they are. No matter how, this small portion, again we operate in this content creator space that is 5% of their overall sales is what they said, or overall people who play the game. There's a lot of people who are getting into the game. I think the game is growing a lot recently, specifically So it's going to be exacerbated by people in like comment sections in these online forums because they're like, well, he's been out of print since like sometime halfway through last year, even sometime before that, he hasn't been in print. So these people who are recently getting in, and like, I think the game has been growing a lot, like I've been saying, it's going to be really loud, and there's going to be a lot of people in these spaces specifically that are like, well, I'm never going to get this unless I pay an insane scalping price. And like you, I really do agree that it's very, very unfortunate. But from this business perspective, looking past this kind of, I hesitate to call it a bubble, but this like limited viewpoint of the people who purchase and engage with the game, I don't think that they're lying to us. I don't think what they're saying at face value is a lie. I think they have reasons that there's no reason for them to continually reprint these, take up business, shelf space in these stores, and they aren't selling and they're sitting there. And there's just so many considerations. Like, yeah, even if you do one more print run at the rate I believe the game is growing at, there's going to always be people who are like, well, it's out of print again. And then like, how do you, navigate that kind of, how many times is the last printing? How many times do we like kind of, do this give and take with the people who play our games and want access to these cards? That being said, I'm also going to go with a business perspective. I'm giving them like an F- on how they handled and announced it, because you need an alternative. I don't think you need an alternative, but I think it's really hard to, I guess I'm getting into the player perspective. I think there needs to be some sort of alternative then, because if you have people who you want to onboard and get into the game, eventually some people will get obsessed enough, like me and Lime here, who maybe even make YouTube channels at one point. There are going to be people who get obsessed enough with the game who at some point they're like, wait, okay, I have Doctor Strange from 2026, but what about the 2021? Like, how do I get that? They're going to look it up and they're going to be like, there's literally no way to get it, essentially, is the answer they're met with. And even though I don't know how any of this works from the business perspective, I just don't think the answer of you can't get it anymore is sufficient. I don't know how they would do it. I know that there's like print and play modules for that one Ronin set that they had at one point, encounter set, that they let people like print these cards because it wasn't like an official product. I don't know if they go that route. I don't know if they get like a local based distributor of some sort and you can buy it through them, but they're like made to order at a much higher price because of course it will be. They're not being printed anymore. But I just, as a player, even though I have all of the game at this point, I feel for people who don't have him or are getting into the game, because there should be an option. And I think there should be an option, but I think people are really entitled that they think the option should be the $15.99 MSRP. I feel like it goes both ways. There has to be a bit of give where the option is never going to be you're going to buy it for the price it released at. It's a 5-year-old product at this point, and I don't think it's very reasonable to expect it to still be readily available at this point. But on the other end, announcing you're retiring packs with no plan at all of getting this content to people who may want it is also not acceptable. I don't know. There's two thoughts there.
Yeah, I don't have much to add about that, because big sad that for people that don't have it, big happy that I also get a new pack, I guess.
Oh wait, yeah, no, I agree on that point where it's like, I guess I didn't even talk about the fact that they're even remaking Heroes in the first place. I love the game. They could literally release a background character number 12 as a hero and I'd probably buy the pack. Like, it literally doesn't matter.
That's a pretty fire name, honestly. Background character number 12. I would buy that.
I'm so entrenched into the game. They could literally release anything and I'd buy it. So Doctor Strange is one of my favorite heroes in general throughout the Marvel Universe. I'm going to buy the second one no matter what. And again, if you're thinking from this onboarding perspective, it does kind of quell that concern. Well, if you're trying to get new people in the game and they don't have these iconic faces to kind of rally around, how do you get people in there? This is their answer to that. So like, all the Wave 1, the Hulks, the Doctor Stranges and whatnot, they're all gone, except they're not gone because they release a new version. But then we got to get to the second point here, which brings up another concern. How do you feel about the fact that they are slowing down? It is slowing down, quote unquote, heroes that aren't even in the game yet because they're going to be taking bandwidth to remake heroes, or do you think it's a necessary evil for the game to continue? Maybe not necessary evil, but I'm kind of giving a bad connotation, but necessary for the game in the future.
Yeah, that's a tough one because like my personal opinion is just like I don't mind. Like
I also
I
don't
really
mind.
do
I
feel
also,
like Doctor Strange version 2 is gonna feel like a completely new character to me.
yeah.
Like I don't feel bad watching Spider-Man 1, Spider-Man 2, and then Spider-Man 3 all about Peter Parker when I'm going to like a movie trilogy. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like it's a little sad if like someone's like waiting for a character, but like there's a couple characters that I really really want to see and like I haven't seen yet this whole time. But yeah, it's just I think this is more of just a personal thing for me that it doesn't bother me.
hmm Um, yeah, again, personally, again, they could literally release anything and I'd buy it. And I'm kind of spoiled in the fact where I don't have a ton of heroes I still want in the game, so I can't really, kind of answer from that perspective. The only one is, I'm looking for the Thing. Come on, man. I know it's got to be coming up. Fantastic Four eventually. That's my guy, but he
Can you
will be
imagine if they just
coming.
did do the thing, but they did do
They
Fantastic
did
Four
everyone
just
else.
despite Char.
That would be so sad. I know he's gonna be a four-hander. He can join my legion of She-Hulk and Colossus. It's gonna be awesome. All the heroes I love playing.
They
um,
like to flip. How is he gonna flip? He's made of rocks. What's he gonna
yeah, I
flip
don't I
with?
don't know. Maybe he like one of the rocks falls off him. I don't know the lore, bro. I'm making stuff up. But yeah, no. I think it's a very valid criticism. I don't want to kind of play it off with jokes entirely, even though I love joking. It's a very valid criticism because there are a lot of kind of these lesser known heroes that maybe not lesser known, but that just aren't in the game yet. I'm talking about even characters that kind of got boosted in popularity through like Marvel Rivals or whatnot. I think
Like
characters that
Jeff
aren't tied to a
Shark.
team. Yeah, Jeff the Shark would be awesome as a pool hero. I'm just gonna throw it out there. But I'm talking someone like Moon Knight who isn't necessarily connected to like any team or anything like that.
Hmm.
Um, Something like a Moon Knight, which would be a really good fit for like a one-off. Like I forgot what the wave after Mad Titans was, where they just had a bunch of champion, Avenger, Guardian, whatnot. They had a bunch of random
That's
like
Sinister Motives, right?
Oh, it was after. Okay, yeah, after Sinister Motive. So like a wave like that where they kind of just pick and choose like kind of random, not at random. Obviously, there's a rhyme and reason, but they kind of pick these different tribes and like teams and whatnot. Like a character like Moon Knight would be like a really good fit in something like that. But then it kind of begs the question: does Hulk V2 take up a spot that would be taken up by someone that brings a new hero into the game? And I could see it from like a thematic view where that would be kind of unfortunate for people really looking forward to these things. Again, me personally, I will buy literally anything they create at this point, but I do understand the other perspective.
Yeah.
And
I don't have much more to add.
and
It's
I
just
was oh, go ahead.
that it's just kind of it sucks, but it just doesn't personally bother me. So then I feel weird just talking about
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Okay, yeah. Um, I was gonna say another kind of aspect of this too is I don't think I included it as a topic on here, but I got reminded of it that I wanted to at this point. Because we're going to this kind of current format, I can see another criticism arising where if they reprint too many cards, and I'm talking about aspect cards specifically, so I wonder if that's like a consideration of something that you would not like or you would like a lot. And when I say reprinting cards that aren't necessarily like a card that desperately needs a reprint is Sorcerer Supreme, I think. But I'm talking about a card that doesn't really need a reprint. Like, what if I'm trying to think of cards that are like, what if we get like another full body charge or something? Like, I don't know, like something that isn't like a staple. It's not like anything like that. It's a good, solid card, but it's not like, you know, um, I don't know what I'm
I
really
kind
trying
of
to
feel
say
that way
here.
about Endurance, honestly.
You don't want copies 10, 11, 12?
Not particularly, no.
Yeah. Um,
The perfect card, which I've been thinking about this whole time. I do want more of
oh,
those.
okay, yeah. So we can talk about that in the ending section. So, yeah, I think there is a consideration there where I like the current format. I just hope that they don't reprint too many things. I'd like to have new cards, even if they are weaker and underpowered, thinking as a legacy perspective. Cool, give me that. I will play in current with the current card pool and I will have a great time. I just hope it's not filled with a
Oh,
ton of remakes of cards that
there's
are
one I
retired.
want.
What
There's
is
one
it?
I want that I don't know if people are gonna agree. I think that I'm gonna get a charred take here.
Okay.
But I love Haymaker, and I would like to have more so that I can have multiple heroes running 3 copies of it.
It's awesome. Yeah. I'm sure you could go like one of the, what is it, the single selling websites. You could just buy 30 copies. I'm sure people will sell them to you. But
Yeah,
it
if
would
you
be
want the
nice to
Haymakers.
it would be nice to have like an actual product. Yeah, no, I mean that'd be something cool. And we could get to we'll get into the future outlook, but I do want to talk about that kind of perfect card you were talking about. So something that isn't so overtuned, but something that isn't so underpowered, like tenacity. I'm sorry, tenacity. I gotta pick on you again. Do you
Yeah.
want me to go first, or do you want to go second? Or wait, I said the same thing. Do you want me to go first, or do you want to go first?
If you don't have a card ready, I'll go
I
first.
I've got one. I've got one.
Okay, then you're the host.
This
I'll let
this
you
one
choose.
this one shouldn't be okay. I'll go first. This one shouldn't be surprising. I was talking about my 14 HP people. I think Limitless Stamina is the most perfectly balanced card because it is so strong, but it is so limited by the heroes that actually need the strength of the card. You're talking the Colossus, you're talking the Hulk, you're talking the She-Hulk. Getting a one cost ready on any hero unrestricted would be absolutely insane. The restriction just makes a ton of thematic sense, it makes a ton of cost sense, and it helps them all accomplish their goal of using their big stats and HP to get another activation. That was my
Yeah.
pick.
Mine, funnily enough, is hopefully going to be boosted by this box.
Okay.
Because I think the perfect card is Med Team.
Ooh, okay.
I
Okay.
love Med Team. Like it just does everything that I want it to do. It's like, what is protection to me when I think about it? I think about I'm blocking damage, I'm healing up my friends, and I'm supporting the team.
Hmm.
And then Med Team can keep you alive to where it's in a sense thwarting in that you don't have to go to alter ego.
Yeah.
And then also it's in another sense you can heal up all the allies and support the leadership player. And then I just think that's so cool. I love Med Team, and it's just like it's way more versatile than it seems like it would be. And I've never heard anyone say it's overpowered.
No. I
I've
think
never
yeah.
heard anyone say it's weak either. But no, some people just don't play it. But I really like Med Team.
No, I love Med Team, especially in multiplayer too. A recent shout from Rewind. I was playing Drax and I played down the Med Team, and in that hero specifically, I think it really shines in multiplayer. But in even for specific heroes in solo, it takes a card where I think it's good in any protection deck, but like it can also be great, and for a character, that it works well on. It's just it it's so high value. Like it's a big initial cost, but 3 for 6 healing is just really good. Like I don't, and it's that variable healing too. It's not only on your identity; it just goes anywhere. Like you said, it becomes more thwarting in that you don't have to flip down, but it also becomes more thwarting if you're a hero with low thwart and you're healing your ally that's doing all of it for you. So
Hmm.
there's a lot. Yeah, I love that
Yeah,
card.
yeah. I was just thinking about that. I'm like, what? That is such a perfect card.
Yeah.
'Cause, like,
um.
I also feel I just hope that that's the power level of the current set is like Med Team.
Yeah, like the current environment, like the power level they're striving for. Med team, I got my sign off too. Let's do it. And all right, let's go ahead and I just realized this Agent of Shield thing has a 2024 copyright in the corner. That's and I don't know why I noticed that. Okay, we're gonna talk about just probably reaching the end here. Just whatever our last thoughts are, future outlook, just a conclusion to wrap everything up. So, like, what is the future outlook for LCGs and Marvel Champions when we're moving into the future here? I can open the floor, you can open the floor. I'll let you open it, and I'll respond.
Okay. I personally was, when I watched the video of the fireside chat, I was really happy the whole time. Like, I think that
Yeah.
this is moving in the correct direction because when you think about, but I think it's really easy to get caught up in thinking about what you're not getting because like that's just kind of what everyone's brain focuses on is like, oh, my thing didn't hit here. So like no matter how many times like a card can save you in a game, like let's say to me my X-Men,
Hmm.
you don't remember the times as you remember when it misses and you die.
Yeah, it's a
Just
loss. It's a
just
loss aversion. It's
yeah. And I feel like when I try to put that aside, like I'm really excited because it sounds like what's happening is we're going to be getting more expansions, more cards, more like more heroes, and it's going to keep going on for a very long time. They keep saying over and over that they're going to keep this game going as long as they possibly can, and that's what I want for the game. And this does feel like a step where they're saying, okay, we finished all this big double trilogy stuff. Let's actually future proof the game a bit so that we can actually deliver on that promise. And I feel like it's a little rocky in certain parts, like what you were talking about and like what other people have mentioned of the things that you're not getting, like you're not getting the Doctor Strange reprint that you're wanting or the Captain America reprint. But I think, at least in my opinion, uh, it's a overwhelmingly positive thing for the future of the game.
I think that was really well said. I'm just gonna talk a little bit and just bounce off some of the stuff you said. Um, I think the reaction initially was, from what I saw, whether it was the majority or the vocal minority or what have you, was pretty not well received. And I think it makes sense for the things you're talking about. Humans tend to want to avert losses than gain, like wins or whatnot, like the loss aversion type of framework of thinking where, um, this can't be good because I'm losing things that I liked like previously, or I'm losing access to something, or they just don't like things being taken away from them. But I also just generally agree with what you were saying that, um, because they're making these business, for the most part, it's a business centered move through the messaging, through the design, and through how they're releasing things as one offs, remakes of heroes. These are all like business minded decisions. But I think if that's what it takes for the game to continue healthily for many years to come, I welcome it for with open arms. Again, me and you are a bit biased in this fact where we don't have to worry about this older content because we have the whole game at this point. And again, that was something they reiterated in the stream a lot of times, which again, if you made it to the end of this video, I hope you had watched the stream and you heeded my warnings. If not, thanks for watching anyways. But there was a lot of times when they were just like, it seemed like they were trying to say that this current environment, legacy environment split, was very kind of marketing and branding more so than anything really changing with the game. They tried to reiterate it a ton of times where it's like, if you have everything and you've been playing, nothing is going to be different from you. I think that is generally true. I do, like you said, feel for people who are getting into the game because I do think the game is growing a lot. And what I will not give them a pass on is they need some way to release this older content that it doesn't have to be in print runs. I don't know how they do it. I just don't think it's acceptable to just not have it at all. But if they don't have it at all, again, selfishly speaking, it won't affect me, and I will feel for those who can't get it. Also, do not buy. Trust me, I'm not going to encourage anyone to go through illicit means or whatnot to get these cards. I'm just saying, do not buy them at the scalpers prices. There will be solutions, I'm sure, going into the future, and the game has a bright future. I'm really looking forward to it. I like a lot of the ideas they said, and Lime didn't tell me what he thought beforehand, but it seemed like we were generally on the same
Yeah.
page, because I think there's a lot to love here, and I think I don't want this to seem like we're like shilling. I think the way they went about it and how they announced it on a random Thursday and this and that, I don't agree with a lot of the execution for this initial announcement at all. but I do think the general idea and plan that they're laying out is something that's really positive. And when you sit down, and I've had like a day and some change to think on it. I think a lot of the changes that are coming are going to be really positive, and I'm looking forward to continue playing this game for however long it's feasible to be supported and create content for.
Yeah, I guess one final thing that I want to add slash reiterate is just that no one can force you to play this game in a specific way. It's ultimately up to you to decide how you want to play the game. And you have a lot of control over that, of what heroes you use, what cards you decide to include in your deck, what difficulty you play on, what mod sets you use. And if it's a massive sandbox for you to be able to create whatever experience you want for yourself. It's
Right.
like, it's really nice having things facilitated, and I think that's really important for them to do. But you're only going to have more options with how you play the game after this, as they release more cards.
Yeah.
Which I think that's important to remember.
Yeah, I agree. Again, not losing access to purchasing things is really tough, and I do think I don't know if I'll say I do think they're going to somewhat take into account this feedback. Maybe they come up with a solution, maybe they don't. I wouldn't fret over it too much. There will always be a solution that comes about, and the game is just going to continue. It's going to keep on trucking. I think it's going to have a very bright future. But I think that's it, unless you have any more finishing thoughts.
I guess I'm just really curious to look at the comments later and
Yeah.
see which one of us had the most charred take.
Yeah, I think
And which one of us had the most zesty take.
oh, yeah, true. Leave it down below. I don't know if I'm gonna call it a chart take, but if you think we're off the deep end, if you think we're getting paid off by FFG on the side to make a marketing video, we're not. But if you think we are, if you think we are, leave it down in the comments below. You're like, I hate these opinions. You guys have no idea what you're talking about. Please, jokes aside, I welcome every and all comments. I'm gonna be talking in the comments section below, directed to me or Lime. If it's directed to Lime, he will probably respond to it. He'll see. We're watching. But that was a ton of fun. Let us know if you agree, disagree, and whatnot. Is our take charred? Are we off the deep end, or are we cooking? I think that's gonna be it. Lime, go ahead and tell them where they can find you and whatnot, and we'll close it out here.
Yeah, thanks. As far as I'm aware, if you just search Daring Lamb on YouTube, I'll come up.
Yeah.
That's about it. I mean,
Yeah.
if you go to my channel, I guess if you want to get like more involved in the Daring Lime extended universe,
Ooh, yes.
uh, there's links to my videos. You'll find like a link to my Discord. I think most of my videos also have a link to like a website I made about like my channel and Marvel Champions and game design, and you can
Yeah.
see some like Python scripts that I wrote with plots showing like efficiencies of raw efficiencies of cards if you want to see that.
Yeah.
So
It's awesome. Ton of cool stuff on Lime's channel. Make sure to check it out. It'll be in the description down below, obviously. And yeah, that's gonna be it. Leave a like if you haven't. Subscribe if you haven't already. All the YouTube stuff and whatnot. That's gonna be it for us. Hope you guys enjoy. Let us know if you'd want more something like this in the future, because I had a ton of fun. And yeah, that's gonna be it. See you guys next time. Bye.
Yeah.